Hello, I'm Robert, and fact-checking for scared people. And this is something that we get asked so often. If Russia invades Ukraine, will that lead to a world war? The answer is no, it will not. So, Ukraine is not part of NATO. Remember that Russia already attacked the Crimea, and NATO didn't fight back. And in the same way, if, for instance, Russia was to attack Donbass or even Kiev, which I explained in previous videos is impossible, but just suppose the impossible, then NATO would not fight back. What NATO would do is it would supply weapons to Ukraine, which Ukraine could then use to fight back, and only defensive weapons. It wouldn't send weapons that could be used by Ukraine to invade Russia, but it would send weapons that Ukraine can use to defend itself from Russia. So, and it would share intelligence like satellite images and so on, and high-flying spy planes or whatever. So that's what would happen. So there's no risk, there never was any risk of NATO and Russia fighting each other. And one thing that confuses people is then, so they ask then, why is NATO sending all these soldiers to the region? Well, the numbers of soldiers sent are tiny, a few thousand. Remember that Russia has 130,000. There's no way that they are not there to fight the Russian soldiers. They're far less even than the Ukrainians, many more soldiers than NATO has sent to the area. Ukraine has about 250,000 soldiers, and NATO is only sending a few thousand to neighbouring countries like Poland and and Lithuania, or wherever it is that they sent them. Some by the United States, some by other countries. They have a rapid response force of 40,000 soldiers, which they can activate in the event that Russia was to invade a NATO country. But Russia is not going to invade a NATO country. That is absolutely no way. Russia doesn't want a world war for the same reason you do not want a world war, and Biden doesn't want a world war. Nobody wants a world war. So there's no way, if Russia was to invade Ukraine, it would not attack Poland. It wouldn't attack any of the neighbouring countries, any of the neighbouring NATO countries. So there's no risk. And then people say, worry that Russia is going to fire nukes at Ukraine. They don't understand. If you say that, you just don't know, haven't looked up, and you don't check the history about it. So Ukraine doesn't have any nukes. And Ukraine used to have lots of nukes in 1994, but it gave them all back to Russia when the USSR split up. And it gave its nukes back to Russia in exchange for a guarantee by Russia, UK and USA. They all agreed not to attack or threaten Ukraine, and it gave security assurances, but not a mutual defence pact. So this is why NATO is sending defensive weapons to Ukraine as part of the Budapest Memorandum, which Russia itself also signed. So Russia is really on very shaky legs if it tries to challenge this, because it itself promised to support Ukraine if it's attacked. And with Crimea, Russia's grey area things, which people are very sympathetic to the separatists will say are justified, and everyone else says it's not justified. But it's grey area, and they say that the Crimea wanted to leave Ukraine, and they had a referendum in Crimea, which was rigged. There's no doubt about that, and the opposition didn't vote at all. But there's no doubt that if the referendum had been held fairly, then Crimea would have chosen to join the Russian Federation. So they have a certain level of legal agreement there, of level of legal basis there for the Crimea. They have a kind of grey area support for it, which people are very sympathetic for Russia and the separatists find plausible. But if they were to attack Ukraine, like Kiev or something, there's absolutely no, not even the remotest justification. And most people who are sympathetic and accepting of Crimea would not accept that. So that'd be a major, major loss to Russia. Loss of confidence. Many countries like Georgia and Ukraine, they would be very strongly saying, well, we just can't trust Russia, and so we've got to join NATO because it's the only way to stay safe. So the Russian this memorandum is also some protection against Russia attacking Ukraine in a blatant way, and it is the reason why Ukraine has no nukes, and then there is no way that Russia wants to attack Ukraine anyway, because there's no way that with first of all, I'll just go and find this thing about brother nation. Where is it? Yes, nobody in Russia wants war. Everyone sees Ukraine as a brother nation. And then in modern warfare, anyway, the nuclear weapons and use of nuclear weapons goes back to after World War II, where gradually over the process of the World War, people got more and more accepting of deaths of civilians, including things like the Berlin firestorm, where many civilians died. And then the two nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not they were at a time of lots of lots of carpet bombing, where they did exactly the same amount of damage, but sending a whole fleet of bombers to drop bombs on Japanese cities. So that was very different times. That is no longer considered acceptable in modern war. The nearest of anything like that was during the Vietnam War. Since then, nobody does that. It'd be far, far worse than like the alleged chemical weapons in Syria. It's just something way out of the pale for modern warfare. We're just not used to it anymore. And then look at the social media and what it would be like. All the people sharing, all the civilians dying in some bombing attack. And so that just doesn't happen anymore. And there is absolutely no way that Russia it's not going to be dropping nukes on Ukraine. There's no way it's going to be dropping bombs on innocent civilians in Ukraine. When Biden said that was a big slur on Russia, there's no way that Russia would do that. I know they have these other things, like the poisonings in England or something. This is of a completely different order. This is not going to happen. No way. Absolutely no way. And so, I'm going to talk about separatists in the next video. So I just wanted to talk about that there's no way that they're going to do big, massive bombing, and there's no way, where I've got. And then I just want to talk about the ICBMs, but this will have already happened by the time I've uploaded the video. I haven't checked, but they were doing it on the 19th. These are just routine. An ICBM is of absolutely there's no point in an ICBM for Ukraine, because an ICBM is meant for attacking another country. It's intercontinental, that's what it stands for, ballistic missile. It's for attacking targets on other continents. And they're going to test it by firing an ICBM from the Pacific up to northern Russia, another one from somewhere in the northern oceans to Russia. So that's absolutely useless for attacking Ukraine. There's no way that Russia is ever going to attack Ukraine with an ICBM. They basically go up higher than they go right high up into orbit, and then they're not actually in orbit around Earth, but they are almost in orbit, and then when they come back down again. And ICBM is powerful enough; it could actually escape Earth's orbit with a lighter warhead. So they're basically big rockets, and there's no way. It's a spaceship really, and there's no way that they're going to use. I mean, why use a spaceship to attack Ukraine? If you think about it that way, it makes absolutely no sense. So that's nothing to do with Ukraine. It's just a coincidence. So anyway, that's it. So I'll upload this, I think I've said everything I'm going to say here. My next one will be about, I'll go up to, my next one is going to be a section about the effect on the Russian economy. No, I talked about that in the did I talk about in the previous video? I'm talking about the invasion of, yes, the invasion would push undersides towards NATO, and then announcing Donbass doesn't make much sense either politically. So I'm going to talk about that in my next video.